Hey guys, tonight we drift into one of those evenings that history can never quite swallow, no matter how many decades pass. You're stepping into Pripyat, April 25th, 1986, the last calm night before the reactor roared and carved itself into the world's memory. And let me warn you right up front, you probably won't survive this one either, not because of radiation levels or reactor explosions, but because the slow, heavy rhythm of this story is going to press your eyelids down until they sag like concrete blocks. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop a comment telling me where you are and what time it is for you right now. I love seeing someone lying in bed in Istanbul while someone else is curling up on a sofa in Buenos Aires. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You walk the streets of Pripyat, and on the surface, it feels like any other Soviet evening. Apartment blocks rise like silent giants, their windows glowing faintly with televisions showing state programming, variety shows, or the same old films recycled again and again. The sidewalks echo with late footsteps, workers returning from long shifts, teenagers whispering under dim street lamps, a bicycle squeaking as a boy coasts past with reckless balance. The city hums with the subdued comfort of routine, but if you linger long enough, you can feel something beneath it, an unease stretching like static in the air. Pripyat is young, only 16 years old at this point, a model city built for the workers of the Chernobyl plant. Wide boulevards, tidy parks, a brand new amusement park waiting to open in May. To many, it feels like a promise of the future, a Soviet utopia built from concrete and ambition. But tonight, as you stand on the empty square, the glow of neon signs flickering against the stillness, you sense a subtle dissonance. The night doesn't feel fully asleep, it feels like it's listening. The air smells of damp earth and coal smoke. Laundry hangs from balconies, swaying faintly in a breeze that isn't strong enough to move anything else. Somewhere a dog barks, sharp and insistent, then goes quiet too quickly, as if it remembered something it shouldn't disturb. Ordinary noises, the slam of a door, the crunch of gravel, the buzz of a streetlight, feel magnified, each one bouncing around the concrete facades like an omen trying to get noticed. You pass a grocery store with its shutters drawn. Earlier, women queued there for milk, bread, maybe apples if they were lucky. Now, the tiled walls echo only the drip of a faucet left slightly open inside. Across the street, a bar still flickers with dim light, a few men inside nursing vodka glasses, their voices lowered to mumbles. One slaps the table, laughing at a joke only half funny, while another stares into his glass as if it might tell him something more important than the conversation. Historians still argue whether anyone in Pripyat felt the strangeness of this night. If mothers really whispered that their children seemed restless, if workers muttered about the odd chill in the air, or if all of these stories were stitched in after, embroidered to make disaster feel inevitable. Yet, walking here, you can't shake the sense that the city itself knows what's coming, even if its people do not. You wander toward the schoolyard, where swings creak faintly in the night breeze. Chalk scrawls still mark the blackboards inside, unfinished math problems, doodles of rockets and stars. The Soviet Union was obsessed with the future, with space and power, with the promise of progress. And here, even children's scribbles carry that weight. But tonight, those chalk marks feel less like lessons and more like countdowns. A quirky tidbit: Pripyat was considered one of the most desirable cities to live in across the USSR. Families moved there eagerly, drawn by the promise of high wages, modern apartments, and access to shops that were better stocked than most towns. Imagine that. This place wasn't seen as a backwater or exile, but as privilege. The irony is sharp, knowing what the name Pripyat will come to mean later. As you walk back toward the central square, you see couples strolling, some holding hands, some arguing quietly under their breath. A woman in a red coat clutches a bag of groceries, her heels tapping fast against the pavement. A soldier stationed nearby lights a cigarette, the glow briefly illuminating the hollows of his tired face. He exhales, watching the smoke vanish into the still, heavy air, then tosses the match carelessly to the ground. Overhead, the sky is strange. Stars pinprick the blackness, but a faint haze lingers low, as if the horizon is cloaked in something thicker than night. A few people pause to glance upward, then shrug and move on. It's April in Ukraine. The nights can be cool and damp, but you can't help noticing the way the clouds seem almost too still, too deliberate, like curtains waiting to be pulled back. The amusement park looms at the edge of town, its Ferris wheel a dark silhouette against the stars. It hasn't opened yet. It never will. But even now you can picture children lining up, laughing, tugging their parents' hands. The rustle of candy wrappers, the smell of fried dough. Instead, the wheel stands motionless, each spoke like the hand of a clock pointing towards something inevitable. You stand there, staring at it, feeling that odd sense of pause, like time itself is winding up. The night wears on, and the city grows quieter. Windows darken one by one as families slip into uneasy sleep. Radios click off, television screens fade to black, and the hum of conversation dwindles until all that's left is the faint thrum of distant machinery from the direction of the plant. Even here, blocks away, you can feel it, the heartbeat of Reactor 4, steady and deep, a rhythm that will soon falter. You lean against a cold railing, listening. A tram rattles past, half empty, its fluorescent light buzzing faintly. Inside, a young man in uniform dozes against the window, his cap tilted low. An older woman clutches a bag of apples on her lap, eyes closed, head bobbing with the movement. They look so ordinary, so unremarkable, and yet tomorrow their lives will be pressed into textbooks, into documentaries, into whispered stories told half a world away. And you, standing here, know what they cannot, that this is not just another Soviet night. This is the hinge of history, disguised as routine. The city of Pripyat breathes, sleeps, waits. And beneath it all, the reactor hums, louder than anyone is willing to admit. You step closer to the plant itself now, the looming bulk of Chernobyl's Reactor 4 rising against the night sky, like some massive industrial cathedral. Its towers and pipes gleam faintly in the moonlight, steam curling lazily upward from vents as though the building itself is exhaling. From a distance, the structure looks calm, powerful, eternal. But when you cross the gates with the night shift, you feel something else, the tension of tired men and women carrying the weight of machinery too vast to ever fully trust. The corridors hum with fluorescent light, pale and cold, buzzing faintly like trapped insects. You pass men in uniforms buttoned just a little crooked, boots scuffing against tile, their breath scented faintly of strong tea or cigarettes hastily smoked before the shift. Some are laughing, voices bouncing too loud in the hollow hallways, masking fatigue. Others are silent, eyes down, already focused on the long hours ahead. For them, this is routine. A plant doesn't sleep. It breathes in uranium and breathes out power, day and night. And the job is to keep the lungs clear. In the control room, you find the heart of the night. Panels stretch wall to wall, lined with dials, switches, glowing red and green lights. Gauges twitch like nervous eyes, needles inching and dipping. It feels less like a workspace and more like sitting inside a giant machine's mind. Engineers murmur to each other in clipped tones, words heavy with numbers, megawatts, coolant flow, rod positions. To outsiders, it's gibberish. To them, it's life or death, though few would phrase it that way tonight. Historians still argue whether the operators that night were reckless or simply trapped by pressure and poor design. Official reports paint them as careless, disobeying rules. Others insist they were cornered by orders, pushed to complete a safety test that had been delayed too many times. The truth is murky, buried under layers of politics and blame. But as you stand here, watching their tired faces in the glow of those dials, it feels less like arrogance and more like exhaustion. A belief that nothing could possibly go wrong, even as warning lights twitch like restless ghosts. A technician leans back in his chair, yawning, muttering about the odd timing of this test. Midnight, when everyone's at their slowest. Another scribbles numbers on a pad, the graphite scratching fast and sharp. A supervisor insists they proceed, tapping the paper with his pen as though certainty could be forced. Around them, the control boards hum quietly, 100 little machines whispering. Quirky tidbit, the operators nicknamed some of the machinery after animals. One set of valves was jokingly called the horses, because of the way they seemed to kick back when pressure surged. It's a small detail, almost silly, but it reveals something human. This wasn't just a room full of engineers. These were men trying to make peace with the beast they worked inside, giving it nicknames as though that could tame it. You wander through the turbine hall, and the noise swells to a constant roar. The massive generators churn, their blades spinning unseen in the shadows. Heat radiates from pipes, metal sweating with condensation. Steam hisses through valves in sudden bursts, startling even those accustomed to it. You trail your hand along a railing, the vibration buzzing into your bones, the reminder that this entire building is alive, pulsing with forces barely kept in check. Somewhere below, a maintenance worker slouches against a wall, sipping from a dented thermos. His face is lined, older than the others, his eyes half closed with weariness. He mutters about his daughter's birthday coming up, about promises to bring her sweets from the city. He doesn't know yet that this night will steal that chance. Around him, younger workers shuffle past, some joking, some humming tunes under their breath, the sound swallowed by the relentless thrum of the machines. You pause, listening to the mix of sounds, the chatter, the footsteps, the roar of turbines, and beneath it all, something else. A subtle rumble that doesn't belong. It's faint, almost imagined, like the building is groaning under weight no one notices yet. You glance at the workers, but no one reacts. Perhaps they've grown used to it, or perhaps they choose not to hear. Historians debate whether the warning signs were visible that night. Gauges twitching in ways they shouldn't, pipes rattling with unfamiliar rhythm. Some claim the signs were obvious, others that hindsight paints them clearer than they ever were. You stand here, caught between both views, feeling that itch of unease without knowing whether to trust it. In the break room, you see men playing cards, the flick of paper against the table oddly loud against the hum of reactors. Cigarette smoke curls in lazy spirals toward the ceiling, staining the fluorescent light a dirty yellow. Laughter bursts briefly, then fades, as though even amusement knows to be cautious here. A radio plays faint music from Kiev, tinny and warbled, a tune meant to soothe that only sharpens the unease instead. You drift back toward the control room, where a clock ticks steadily toward midnight. The test begins soon. The men lean closer to their panels, voices lowering, shoulders stiffening. The room feels smaller now, the air heavier. Each instruction is repeated, each order acknowledged. The ritual of control, the illusion of certainty. You watch them prepare, not knowing that every step forward is a step deeper into the trap. Outside, the town of Pripyat sleeps under a sky pricked with stars. But in here, the night grows tighter, louder, more fragile. And you realize the quiet of the city and the hum of the reactor are two sides of the same coin, spinning in the dark, about to land on disaster. The clock ticks past midnight, and the air inside the control room grows dense, as though every breath carries weight. The men lean over their panels, voices dropping to clipped commands. Switches snap, rods lower, gauges twitch. You feel the plant straining, adjusting, the reactor itself exhaling in long metallic sighs. The test is underway, though most of Pripyat sleeps unaware that their lives now hinge on the quiet exchanges inside this room. You slip into the rhythm with them, sensing the rising tempo. One engineer calls out a measurement, another confirms, a supervisor nods. It's a symphony of certainty, or at least the pretense of it. Yet beneath the routine lies the tremor of doubt. You see it in the way a hand lingers over a dial, in the tightness of a jaw. They're pushing a machine designed to hum at full power into conditions it was never meant to endure. Historians still argue whether it was arrogance, ignorance, or inevitability. The Soviet design had flaws hidden deep in its steel bones, unstable at low power, sensitive to sudden changes. But the men at the panels weren't reading history books. They were following orders, completing a delayed safety test meant to simulate a blackout. On paper, it was routine. In reality, it was like poking a bear with a stick while insisting it would stay asleep. A light flickers on a panel, unexpected, unwelcome. A technician frowns, taps the glass, mutters about unstable readings. His colleague waves it off, insisting the numbers are fine. They can't turn back now. Too much time wasted, too much pressure to deliver results. You watch the unease ripple through the room, quickly smoothed over by forced confidence. But you know what they don't. that beneath their feet, forces are gathering, invisible but unstoppable. Quirky tidbit. Some accounts say one operator kept a small Lucky Charm tucked inside his uniform pocket, a carved wooden figure, worn smooth by years of handling. He rubbed it absent-mindedly that night, as though trying to steady not just himself, but the reactor as well. You picture it, a tiny piece of folk superstition sitting inside one of the most advanced nuclear facilities of its time. It's almost absurd, almost poetic. You drift down into the bowels of the plant, where pipes hiss and valves clatter in constant conversation. The turbines groan, spinning their endless circles, the heat pressing against your skin like an invisible hand. Men walk these spaces with the weary confidence of miners, their boots echoing on metal walkways, their flashlights bouncing against walls sweating condensation. They know every sound here, every shift of pressure, but tonight the rhythm is just a little off, too sharp, too sudden, like an orchestra rushing ahead of its conductor. One worker pauses, squinting at a pipe that rattles faintly. He runs a hand along the metal, listening to its vibration. His partner shrugs, dismisses it as nothing unusual. The man lingers a moment longer, uneasy, before moving on. Later, survivors will argue over moments like this. Were the signs truly there, or is memory simply painting them brighter with hindsight? You stand in the echo of his hesitation, wondering the same thing. Back in the control room, tension tightens. The test is in motion, but the readings aren't clean. Power dips too low, then surges too fast. Operators adjust rods, pull them, push them, voices overlapping with worry that edges into frustration. The supervisor insists on continuing. The reactor resists, straining like an animal forced into a corner. You feel it in the floor, the faint vibrations crawling up your legs, the whisper of steel straining against itself. Outside, the town of Pripyat sleeps beneath a sky clear and cold. Street lamps glow faintly, casting amber pools across empty sidewalks. Dogs bark now and then, restless, pacing in courtyards. A few insomniacs stare out of windows, smoking, listening to the hum of the plant in the distance, a lullaby they've learned to ignore. None of them know the test that hums behind their dreams. You step out for a moment into the night air near the plant, watching the smoke rise from vents against the starlight. It looks so ordinary, so steady. The kind of sight you'd pass without notice if you didn't know better. But tonight, the smoke curls differently, almost reluctant, as though the building itself is hesitating. You shiver, though the cold isn't the only reason. Historians debate endlessly whether disaster was avoidable that night. If the test had been delayed again, if the rods had been adjusted sooner, if warnings had been heeded, so many ifs stacked like dominoes. You realize that history often isn't a grand inevitability, but a pile of small decisions, each one carrying the weight of worlds. And tonight, each decision tips closer toward catastrophe. You drift back inside as the clock ticks toward 1 a.m. The operators hunch over their stations, sweat beading on foreheads despite the coolness of the room. Cigarettes smolder in ashtrays, untouched. Papers litter the desks, numbers scribbled in frantic scrawls. The room smells of smoke, metal, and something else, an edge in the air you can't name, the scent of machinery pushed too far. And then, in a moment so small it almost passes unnoticed, the test reaches its turning point. Orders given, switches pressed, rods jammed halfway. The reactor stirs, uneasy. The dials flicker. The lights glow harsher. And you know, though no one else does, that history just leaned forward, hungry. The clock strikes past 1 in the morning, and the control room hums with a rhythm that feels too fast, too sharp. The men are tense now, voices clipped, eyes darting from dial to dial. Orders are repeated, confirmed, executed, yet something isn't settling. The reactor resists every adjustment, its power sliding up and down like a wild horse refusing reins. You stand among them, unseen, and feel the temperature in the room rise though no one dares to remove a coat. Outside, the night is unervingly still. The Pripyat River reflects stars like broken glass scattered across ink. Apartment blocks stand silent, windows dark except for the occasional flicker of a late-night lamp. The town is asleep, oblivious to the tug-of-war happening just kilometers away. A baby cries somewhere in the distance, a sound carried faintly on the cold air. Dogs bark again, restless. Quirky tidbit. Some survivors later swore animals tried to flee before dawn. Cats clawing at doors, dogs straining at leashes. Historians still argue whether this was true foresight or a story embroidered after the fact. Back inside the plant, tension is thicker than the smoke curling from ashtrays. Cigarettes burn long and forgotten as men hunch over consoles, muttering numbers. Gauges swing erratically, red needles dancing like taunts. One operator calls out a reading too low, another says it's impossible. They argue briefly, the words swallowed by the clicking of switches and the slam of levers. It's a storm of certainty and doubt colliding in a single room. A supervisor insists the test must go on. Delays have piled too high. Moscow is waiting. The results must be delivered. You can almost taste the stubbornness in his tone, iron and unyielding. Another man rubs his temples, sweat shining on his forehead. He knows the danger, but his hands still move across the panel, because orders are orders, and the Soviet machine doesn't stop for second thoughts. Historians debate endlessly whether these men were victims or culprits. Some call them reckless. Others insist they were trapped by systemic flaws, an unsafe design, poor communication, relentless pressure. You watch them now and see only human beings, caught in a machine larger than themselves, trying desperately to make sense of a reactor that no longer listens. Down in the bowels of the plant, pipes groan louder, valves hiss angrily, metal rings with vibrations that echo through the corridors. A worker pauses, flashlight beam trembling on a sweating wall. He mutters about strange sounds, about vibrations too sharp, too deep. His partner shrugs again, insists it's normal. But you can hear it. The building is groaning, like a body under too much strain, bones threatening to snap. Above, in Pripyat, sleep holds but uneasily. Curtains stir in a draft. Radios left on low whisper lullabies into empty rooms. Couples shift in their beds, half aware of something unsettled. A teenager sneaks onto a balcony, smoking under the stars, and pauses, frowning at the silence of the night. It's too still, the kind of silence that feels heavy on the skin. He shivers, throws his cigarette, and goes back inside, leaving the stars to watch alone. Back in the control room, the clock edges closer to disaster. The men lower control rods, but too many are pulled too far. Power surges, dips, lurches. Dials spin in frantic arcs. Alarms buzz half-heartedly before being silenced. The room is a blur of movement, shouts, hands slamming levers, voices climbing higher. The test is unraveling. The machine they thought they commanded is no longer theirs. Quirky fact. One operator later claimed he thought he saw a faint blue glow through the reinforced windows. A radiation halo, invisible to most, deadly to all. Historians debate this detail, wondering if it was real or just memory bending under trauma. But you imagine it. A ghostly light seeping into the room, unnoticed by all but one, foreshadowing what was about to break free. The air thickens, buzzing faintly, as though static electricity fills the room. You feel it prickling your skin, raising hairs on your arms. The men are shouting now, urgency dissolving into panic. They know something is wrong, but they don't yet know how wrong. Hands dart across consoles, desperate to reverse the surge, to steady the beast they've awakened. But the beast is already moving, already turning. You step back, watching the final moments of control slip away. The supervisors shout, the engineers obey, but the reactor doesn't listen. The floor vibrates harder, a low growl rising from the heart of the plant. Somewhere deep in its steel veins, water turns to steam too quickly, pressure clawing at walls not built to withstand it. The hum of machinery shifts into a roar, and you know, time has run out. The last seconds drag long, like the pause before a scream. Men call out readings no one can hear. Alarms wail, lights flare red. Fingers slam switches too late. Someone shouts, "Stop," but the word is swallowed by the rising thunder. And then, stillness. A heartbeat of silence, terrible and absolute, as if the universe holds its breath. You know what comes next. The silence breaks not with a bang, but with a tearing sound, metal splitting, steam exploding, pipes shrieking like tortured voices. The control room jolts, men thrown against consoles as alarms scream into chaos. You stagger with them, clutching the rail as the entire building convulses. And then it happens. Reactor 4 rips open, its core erupting with a force no one believed possible. A column of fire punches into the sky, a blue-white flash that turns midnight into a false dawn. The shockwave shatters windows across Pripyat, rattling dishes in kitchens, waking children from uneasy dreams. Dogs howl, lights flicker, and the earth itself seems to groan. The plant spews fragments of glowing graphite into the night, littering the grounds with chunks that hiss and smoke like embers from the underworld. You stumble outside with the workers, the air acrid with burning metal. The sky glows with strange colors, a halo of fire crowned by something you can't quite name. It isn't just flame, it's radiation, invisible, silent, but deadly all the same. A man picks up a piece of graphite, curious, rolling it in his hand like a stone. He laughs, unaware that it is already searing through his skin. Quirky tidbit. Many survivors later recalled how the debris seemed harmless, even fascinating, bright, hot, but not feared. Only later would they realize they'd been holding death itself. In Pripyat, curtains are pulled back, windows thrown open. People peer toward the plant, marveling at the glow. To them, it looks almost beautiful, like northern lights conjured in the wrong sky. Some step out onto balconies, pointing, whispering, reassuring each other that the fire will be put out quickly. No one knows that the very air they are breathing is already thick with invisible poison. Historians still argue whether officials knew the scale immediately or whether denial blinded them. Either way, the people of Pripyat slept that night with disaster unfolding above their heads. Back at the plant, chaos reigns. Firefighters rush in, sirens wailing, boots pounding the ground. They spray water into the inferno, climbing onto the roof, hauling hoses through smoke that burns their throats raw. They fight not knowing they are stepping into radiation strong enough to blister skin in seconds, to kill within days. Yet they fight with stubborn bravery, their helmets glowing orange in the firelight. You watch as one collapses, coughing, his comrades dragging him away, their own bodies already beginning to fail. Inside the control room, disbelief anchors itself even in the face of devastation. Some insist the reactor is intact, that the explosion is external, that it cannot be true. It's impossible, one repeats, voice breaking. But through the shattered windows, the truth burns undeniable. The core is gone, exposed to the night, a wound that cannot be closed. The men's faces are pale, drained not just by fear, but by the radiation already working its way through their blood. You wander to the edge of Pripyat's main square. People are gathering, murmuring, their faces lit by the strange horizon. Children clutch toys, pointing at the sky's eerie glow. Mothers hush them. Fathers mutter that it's just a fire, that everything will be fine. But the air carries something heavier, a taste of metal on the tongue, a tightness in the chest. It's subtle, insidious, impossible to name, and unstoppable. Historians debate the moment when the Soviet Union truly realized the scope of what had happened. Was it when the reactor roof was gone? When radiation alarms screamed past their limits? Or only when Swedish sensors, thousands of miles away, picked up the invisible plume drifting west? You stand here, in the middle of it, and you know the truth. The moment the core split, history itself cracked open. The hours stretched toward dawn. Fire trucks line the plant, hoses hissing, men coughing, collapsing, rising again. Workers stumble, vomiting, their skin reddening with burns no flame touched. Yet the town of Pripyat still sleeps in fragments, reassured by officials who downplay, delay, dismiss. Children breathe deep, lovers embrace, dreams tangle on bedsheets, all beneath a sky painted with fallout. You step back, no longer needing to follow every detail. You already know the shape of the morning. Buses lined to evacuate, Geiger counters shrieking, families leaving homes they will never return to. But for now, you remain in this moment, in the fragile hours before truth breaks wide. The city is quiet. The stars are fading. The reactor burns like a second sun, and the world has no idea yet what has been unleashed. And so the night before is gone, replaced by a dawn stained with fire. You have walked through the silence, the hum of machines, the unease of men and animals, the weight of decisions that could not be undone. And now you carry it back with you, into your own quiet room, into your own waiting bed, knowing that sometimes history doesn't whisper warnings. Sometimes it simply breaks open. The lamps dim, The fire fades. The story folds itself closed. So now, as you lie back, let the glow of Chernobyl's fire fade from your thoughts. Let the hum of the reactor, the shouts of men, the quiet of Pripyat's sleeping streets soften into the background of your mind. The disaster is vast, unmeasurable, but here, tonight, it is just a story carried gently to you across time. What lingers most isn't the explosion itself, but the moments before. The child tugging a blanket tighter, the operator wiping sweat from his brow, the dogs barking into shadows. Ordinary fragments, now immortal, sealed into the legend of that night. Breathe slowly. Imagine the stars overhead, unchanged, the same stars that shone over Chernobyl that night, still burning now. Let them guide you into quiet, steady and sure, even when history trembles. Sleep well and dream gently. Sweet dreams.